What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Team Chat Podcast, a video game show where we talk about games, the ones we love, the ones we hate, and everything in between. I'm one of your hosts, Jarrett Wilson, joined across the power of the internet by my co-host, Rachel Mogan.
Buongiorno.
Buongiorno to you as well.
I'm just now realizing that this is maybe the first day in a long time that I'm wearing my contacts instead of my glasses when we record.
You know, that's true. I
was
think you're
sitting
right.
here like looking at myself and I was like, why do I look weird? Because when we record in the mornings, I'm always wearing my glasses because I haven't put on my contacts yet. But today it's an afternoon recording, so
getting
here
those
we
contacts. There we go. Well, Team Chat Podcast is a weekly video game show, like I said, where new episodes come out on Tuesdays, 9 a.m. Central Time across the World Wide Web, and you can listen to those on podcast services such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and others. You can also watch a video version of each episode over on our YouTube channel. Links for all that in the description below. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can join our Discord server if you want to talk about some games and other fun topics with us throughout the week when we're not on here recording the show. And finally, if you'd love to help make the show bigger and better, you can head over to patreon.com/teamchatpodcast, where for as little as $1 a month, you can support the show. And in return, we'll give you cool perks like getting the episodes early before their general Tuesday release and access to a private patrons only channel on our Discord server. I still want to confuse those two and say a Discord only channel on our patron server, but no, it's a patron only channel on our Discord server, the Rogues Gallery. But if you can't do that, no big deal at all. We totally understand and would still love and appreciate your support in other ways, such as telling your friends, writing us fun reviews, and, just basically getting the good word of Team Chat Podcast out there to the masses. So to all of our listeners and patrons alike, we love you and thank you for being here with us. Heart emojis. Boom.
emoji.
I just love that that's become part of our spiel. I love it. It's a fun little added little bonus. It's a good time all the way around. But before we get into today's topic, let's get a little bit of news and what's coming out soon in our Moment with Mogan.
Yeah, so we've got quite a few games coming out this week. All of the following come out on October 13th. G.I. Joe Operation Blackout, a game I know nothing about and have no desire to learn about. But that's coming out for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. So is Red Wings, Aces of the Sky for Xbox One. Second Extinction is coming out for PC only. And Torchlight 3, which someone I know was really excited about this. Walrus. You don't know him, but in my other Discord server, Walrus was really excited about Torchlight 3, and that's coming out for PS4, Xbox One, and PC. On October 15th, we have quite a few games coming out. Age of Empires 3 Definitive Edition is coming out for PC. Cloudpunk is coming out for PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. Cloudpunk is one of the few games that I'm vaguely interested in this week. Most of these others are not really my cup of tea. For example, Monster Truck Championship.
Oh man, you're not excited about that one? Come on.
Incredibly no, but it is coming out for PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Raji, an ancient epic. So it, of course, premiered maybe about a month or two ago for the Nintendo Switch as part of like an indie direct, but it is now also coming to PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Space Crew, which part of me is like, maybe it's just a parody or offshoot of Among Us, but it's such a banal title. I don't know what to think of such a game. But Space Crew is coming out for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Tears of Avia, or Avia, unknown, is also coming out for Xbox One and PC. And then rounding out the end of the week, we have two heavy hitters. Mario Kart Live Home Circuit for the Switch, which does look like a pretty
That looks like
fun
an amazing
little game.
fun time.
Yeah, it looks fun, so I'll give it that. And then NHL 21 for PS4 and Xbox One. Don't buy sports games. Don't do it. Although maybe hockey isn't that bad. I don't know.
Apparently, like, I saw IGN gave the Switch port for FIFA 21 a 2 because it's so just like a bland copy paste.
Did you see the article? I'm not sure if it was the same article or a different one. I feel like it was either IGN or GameSpot, where they had an article title that was FIFA's continued to just copy and paste the same game onto the Switch from the previous year, so we've just copy and pasted our same review to lower the score.
That's what I was talking about.
I was like, that's a wonderfully sick burn.
Man, it's just
because it's just copy pasted material. It's not new. Don't buy sports games.
I feel like those games actually get like a actual upgrade in terms of like what they offer and differences, like maybe every 4 or 5 years, maybe.
I would say 5
You know?
years. I would say with each new console, maybe. I
Yeah.
have no high hopes that things are going to be any better in PS5 and Xbox One S, Series X.
Just those
Whatever.
graphics, you're going to see that sweat a whole lot clearer. That's what you're getting. Those are the upgrades you're getting there.
First of all, gross. Second of all, graphics are.
Isn't that what you want to see when you play a sports game? Is you want to see the blood, sweat, and tears of your players accurately just portrayed on the screen? Yes, please.
It's really not. And if you need any proof that graphics aren't why people play games anymore, just look at Stardew Valley, look at Paradise Killer. It's not what we're out here being about these days.
Nope.
Give it a rest.
No. That's definitely not it at all. But in some fun news that I saw, this is the first time. It's fun because it's really cool. But this is the first time I've actually seen. Speaking of next gen and things like that coming through, now that people are starting to get their hands on Xbox Series X and different stuff like that, they're starting to show videos and you're being able to see actual demonstrations of some of the features that are going to be coming to the new consoles. One of which I just saw today, displayed off from Lamar Wilson on Twitter. He showed off a video of the quick resume feature of the Xbox Series X, and my God, I was pretty impressed because from what I thought it was going to be something similar to, how the PS4 now, you can put it in rest mode, and when it starts back up, your game's still loaded up and you're just right there where it was. So that's what I had kind of in my head. Oh, that's what this is? Au contraire to myself is what I said after seeing this video, because you can literally switch in between two games that are open and switch to where you were last playing them just by going to the main hub and hitting that application and starting it up. It'll show the screen, the main logo splash screen for the game that you're starting, but then it'll just roll right into where you were. It is insane how quick he switched between playing Borderlands 3 and another game. I'm kidding. I forgot which one it is now. Oh, Minecraft Dungeons. And he switched and was playing in between the two, just seamlessly switching. And it will only take a matter of seconds to switch in between each game. And he was just back in, didn't have to select his save from the previous thing. And I was just like, holy shit, that's incredible.
That is actually incredible.
Yeah.
Is it for a maximum of 2 games? Or
I'm sure there has to be some kind of limit on it. I'm assuming yes, it is 2 games at this point. Is what from his video. But yeah, I grossly underappreciated what this feature was. And so that's
incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. So that I saw that and was just like, man, that's awesome.
Dude, if I had that feature when I'm trying to play Hollow Knight's Path of Pain, that would solve all of my problems.
Exactly. You could literally switch and be playing another game, and Hollow Knight is still open in the background. It's cool stuff.
That's actually a really nice feature.
Yeah.
I had no idea that it was going to have that capability. Is that for both the Series X and S? I would think.
We would think.
Don't quote us on that.
He was doing it on a Series X, so that's what I know for sure that you can at least do it there. The other little quick thing is that I literally just saw. I was in because you had messaged me about potentially doing Among Us sometime soon, and so I was looking on Steam trying to get that, and guess what? My eyes saw on that storefront that there's a demo out now for a new Stronghold game.
Wow, Stronghold!
It's like Stronghold Warlords, and it's gonna be taking place in East Asia and everything like that. So it's a different setting completely. So you're gonna have Genghis Khan. I said you could be in other stuff like that, but still, and it doesn't come out until January 2021. But it has a demo out now, so you better be damn sure that I downloaded that to be able to try that out, because hell yeah, new Stronghold. I'm all about that stuff.
How long has it been?
Oh, a long time since the Stronghold game came out. Very long time. Because I want to say, I don't honestly know off the top of my head, but it's been close to 10 years, maybe 7-ish years. So yeah, it's been a long time. So I saw that those two things happened to me today, and I was just like, my God, video games are amazing and wonderful, and I love them so much.
Yeah, that's awesome. Heck yeah, we finally get Milord Jarrett's return.
Which I will say too. I know I've been streaming a little bit more lately. I'm trying. I do want to do Stronghold and actually play that. I know that's been one of the things I've talked about for forever, but I want to do it so much soon.
We just got to go get you that Burger King crown, make you a little cape, and you'll be good to go.
I'm loving it. I love where this is heading.
We can dress up Fender and Birdie as your serfs. They can just be little peasants. How
That would
cute
be
would that
amazing.
be?
That would be awesome. I would love
That
that.
would be awesome.
Oh man. Well, like we mentioned this game in our moment with Mogan as coming out this week for the PS4, Xbox One, and PC. And that is Raji, an Ancient Epic, which we have now both played through the game. We played it on the Switch because that's what we had it for when it was first released. And I did my first impressions on it back when Mogan did her first impressions of Spiritfarer. But now we're both played the game and are here to deliver our final review to celebrate it being released onto more platforms. So Raji, an Ancient Epic was developed by Nottinghead Games, published by Super.com or Super.com Limited, and was designed by Avishal Singh. And the basic synopsis of this game is that you play as Raji, a young circus performer whose brother is captured during a demonic invasion of their lands. And so Raji then sets out on this epic quest to retrieve her brother and save not only her brother and her but also her people from Mahabalasura and his demonic forces. So this game was I enjoyed it a lot. I'm just going to go ahead and just say I had a lot of things that I enjoyed about it. It was very fun also to not only play in this isometric platformer that we played in, but also just the setting for it was so new, the background of it, and obviously it even had actually had some educational value to it as well as just being able to learn a lot more about this area and history that I am not very familiar of. So I think it had a lot of selling points for it.
Absolutely. And so that really the setting is why I think both of us, or at least certainly I, was immediately drawn to this game.
Oh no,
when
me
it
too.
came out in the Indie Direct. It just looked so beautiful. It's a setting that we really don't get any of. I mean, not in like a mainstream way over here in the West. And I mean, I feel like maybe the gaming scene in India is maybe not as prevalent as it is in the US or in Western Europe or China or Japan. So, which is baffling because they have so many people, so many potential video game players. So I feel like this might be the start of a curve, the start of a new trend towards seeing more video game developers and more indie studios coming out of this area of the world, which I would be really excited about.
Well, because not only does it focus on that, it was developed in India as well.
Exactly. And speaking of which, when I was doing some research just kind of about Raji and about its development and its history, first of all, I didn't realize until I started looking into it that Raji was actually a Kickstarter funded game. I had no idea until I found this in an article from 2007. This article is 3 years old now, and it was
2007 or 2017?
2017.
I was like, wow, this game's been in development for a really long time.
No, that was my bad. So this is from, I think, an interview or a blog post that appears to have been posted on RajiTheGame.com. So they did an interview with the developers back in 2017, and that's where I learned that it was a Kickstarter-funded game. And I got some interesting background on kind of how the developers got the idea for it in the first place. This is a quote from, I believe, Avishal Singh. He says, "On New Year's Eve of 2013, I was in Jaisalmer, Rajasthan, visiting its many forts." Avishal begins. On being asked how the idea behind the game came to be, he says, "I was completely enchanted by the architecture of the forts, and I started to think it would be a fantastic idea to have a game in this setting." And I just thought that was really fitting because one of the very first locations that you go to in the game, and this is going to be a fairly spoiler-filled review of the game, but
right, we'll try to keep it vague and free of those for a little bit while we talk about some of the mechanics, stories, things like that. But then once we get to our deep dive and like discussing the endings and stuff like that, we'll let you all know before the spoilers really start.
It's also not like, a murder mystery game. There's not like big, wild secrets that we're going to be unveiling here.
Right.
So it's not exactly the story is integral to the game, but it's not necessarily a purely story-driven game.
Right.
You can understand the story in advance and still enjoy the game, without having no prior knowledge of it. So one of the very first locations that you go to as Raji is name of fort I cannot remember and did not write down, but it's like the first or second area that you go to where you discover that quite a few guards have tragically been just slaughtered en masse by Tell me his name again. Mahabalasura.
Mahabalasura. Got it.
I didn't write any of this shit down. So
I did because I knew I would need it for. I would need it for. I would definitely need it for reference. Yeah.
Yeah, I really should have done that. But she comes across this fort that has just been gutted by Mahabalasura and his forces, and it's, both a test of her spiritual strength and her physical strength.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the architecture of that initial fort gives a fantastic idea of where the game is going in terms of it being a kind of sandstone, golden, sun-washed, very earthy reds and amber tones.
Mm-hmm.
Just this beautiful location with howling winds, and appears to be like high in the mountains, I would say, because the viewpoint of the game is, as Jarrett said, like the isometric top-down kind of bird's eye view.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's actually fairly small is what your viewpoint is of Raji, except in rare instances where the game kind of zooms in because you're in a smaller area. But for example, if you're up on the parapets of the fort and you're running from place to place and you're fairly alone, there aren't necessarily that many monsters there, and you've got a lot of room to roam, you get a pretty broad, wide out view, and it just gives you these really nice vistas, I would say. I spent a lot of time in the game. I spent a lot of time just kind of just enjoying the setting, just looking around and being like, beautiful sunset today.
Yep.
I did a lot of that.
What am I doing again? Oh yeah, I gotta go.
I don't remember what I'm doing here. I'm just having fun and looking at this beautiful environment. So visually speaking, the game is gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
And who is it that was the level designer, game designer, blah, blah, blah. Game artists. That's what I was going for. So Avishal is the main game designer and developer, but the fellow founders, Shruti Ghosh and Ian Maud, are two of the game's primary game artists.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like they, them and everybody else on the team deserves major kudos for creating just a gorgeous product. It is a beautiful, very visually appealing game.
So, other than the outstanding art and look of the game, how did you feel about the cutscenes? How they handled cutscenes, which were these like 2D animated, more like what I said in my first impression of being almost like a shadow puppet marionette style. Like silhouette. I'm kind of being confusing, I think, in how I'm saying, but basically it's like puppeted.
Puppeteering.
Cutscenes. Puppeteering. Thank you. I'll get that eventually.
I thought that was awesome. I thought, what a wonderful style to use in a way to do cutscenes that is very bold, very graphic, gets the point across, and maybe does have a little bit more of that cultural link because I feel like, at least in terms of the design of the game, those super bold geometric patterns, at least evoke images of India and kind of that ancient history look. So I thought that was really well done. I also really liked the in-game story link because Raji's younger brother, Golu, it gives you some background right in the very first cutscene of the game where they're setting everything up that as circus performers, Raji is an acrobat, so she does the tightrope, like balancing on the tightrope and doing acrobatic tricks and all that. Her younger brother Golu, though, who is like a really young kid, he's probably 7 or 8 in this game, I would guess, and Raji looks like she might be a young teenager. Golu, as part of his circus act, does puppeteering. He does puppet shows for people, so I like that they kind of tied that in.
Oh, see, I totally missed that. I totally missed that. So that makes way more sense with the cinematics. It was the first thing that I
thought of. I was like, yeah, of course it would be puppeteering because Golu's a puppeteer. So I thought that was just a really nice touch.
That is a great touch.
The other way that they do cutscenes is in-game, like while you're playing cutscenes, where you will come across these massive, beautiful murals that are just interspersed throughout the different environments that you go to. And just like in real life, they depict primarily religious events, kind of like birth of the gods, creation stories, major conflicts between the gods and demons, or, interactions between gods and mortals. And the murals were done in a fairly traditional style. They really did look like painted murals on a wall that you could find anywhere. But of course, everything in Raji is new per se, because it is ancient times. So, they've got their bright, vibrant colors. Everything is gorgeous to look at. And whenever you come across one of these murals, you can kind of stand in front of them and interact with them, sort of, because your two narrators, the gods who are following Raji humanity and who have more or less chosen her to be their champion among humanity, to go and save the youths, save the kids, and save humanity by and large. That would be Durga and Vishnu.
Mhm.
And I loved their interplay between each other. I thought that their voice actors were both incredible. I think that their lines were extremely relatable, which is funny because they're gods, but they're the ones that kind of tell you. They kind
Right.
of talk over Raji and explain, oh, here she's come across this mural. It depicts blah, blah, blah. And they'll tell you the background of all of the murals, which is, like you said, part of that historical and cultural learning that I think is really important for us, especially, being resident white people.
Yep,
we can always deal with more learning and more understanding.
Well, that's one of the things that made me really love this game, is because how well that was blended into the gameplay. Because it would be a extended period of time where you would just be playing the game and going through the levels, beating up demons and whatnot. But then there would be when they would get to a part where like, okay, you're going to learn more about these deities, it would be a not like lengthy, but like a substantial amount of time would be given to being able to go to each one of these murals and follow this story along as you're going throughout these areas. And so I just thought like how it was you could have skipped it if you wanted to, like, especially if it's your second playthrough or whatever, you can just go by those. They're not required to be able to advance the story, but still for players like me and you, I thought that was an incredible touch to have into this game, to have these insights and to have this area to learn more of the history, to learn more of the drivers behind like why this is such a big thing that Mahabalasura is back, and why they have to they've entrusted Raji with this quest, and why Durga thought that she was the best one to be able to handle this quest and stuff like that. And I love too that even in their narrations and conversations back to each other, like Vishnu is questioning, is Raji strong enough for this? And like, did you make a good choice? And and Durga is going back and forth being like, no, like she is strong enough. She may not know it yet, but we'll see. Like we'll see that and pray that she's up to this task. But I just thought that it put a lot of context behind everything in a game that while I don't necessarily think it would have suffered for not having that, I think having it made it stronger for sure.
I totally agree. And you do mention that you can technically pass by the murals, but they don't just give you background from history and from Indian culture. It's baked right into the game. So if you want to understand the game's point, the game's story, what is the current conflict that's happening, it behooves you to go along with the murals and actually try to understand what's happening here, because that's where you learn, exactly like you said, how Durga is actually the one who defeated Mahabalasura like a bazillion million, they don't specify the number of years, but a long ass time ago. That's all you need to know. And in one of those initial murals, this is just it was a learning point for me, because this was something that even the term, I didn't really understand what it was at the time. They come to the mural depicting where Mahabalasura broke into heaven, like just straight up busted in and started basically kicking out like the residents of heaven, which is and I do apologize if I have not learned this correctly or if I get anything wrong, but they mentioned the Devas,
Yes.
Deva, and I was like, what's a Deva? So I had to go and look it up, because I was like, well, now I really want to know. I want to know what the Devas are. So as I understand it, the Devas, like the word Deva means heavenly, divine, or according to Wikipedia, anything of excellence. I'm going to hope that that's right.
Okay.
And is also one of the terms for a deity in Hinduism. So the term Deva really does just mean the gods, these divine creatures that are in heaven. I'm not sure if they would necessarily call them gods, but that's the gist that I'm getting. Whereas the Asuras are more like the polar opposite. They're the evil ones, I guess is kind of how I understand it. That is, of course, a very surface level understanding, because as I said, this has inspired me to try and learn more. So I think that's probably the main reason that I did enjoy Raji, an Ancient Epic, is because it motivated me and it really inspired me to be like, man, now I really want to learn more about this. Because the same thing happens when you play games like I'm totally gonna blank on the name of it. No. All right. It's the one where you're like, it takes place in ancient Mexico and you're a shaman. Oh my God, what is that game? I have followed
Recent
it on
or new?
Twitter. It came out maybe 2 years ago. Mexican game Shaman. Uh,
Yeah, it's
go
not
on
right.
Google.
I thought you were gonna.
Mulaka. It's
Mm,
Mulaka.
okay, okay.
Gee, I've been a big fan of that game for so long, and I've just never really gotten to talk about it that much. I know we've talked about it on the show before it came out, but yes, it's kind of like the Mulaka effect, where you play this game and you have no idea what's happening in cultural context, and it just makes you go, I gotta read more, huh?
I gotta be smarter about this stuff, huh? I gotta
I've got to
learn.
actually be a little smarter, and I need to make a little bit more of an effort to branch out with the kinds of media that I consume.
Mm,
So that got me to read just a bunch of stories in English, obviously, a bunch of books and stories in English that take place in those different settings that are just outside of what you know,
right.
because it's more fun. It helps you expand your mind, and I think Raji does a really good job of doing that without having it be a bore,
Right.
because things can definitely become boring when it's a little bit too much learning, but that's not the case with Raji, because it is, we're making it sound like it's all story. It's really not. It's a lot of action. It's a
Yeah,
very action
like
packed
the
game.
majority of the game is action and actually playing. So
Yeah.
that's the perfect segue then to talk about the combat and everything, because that is the majority of what you're doing is battling demons. And what did you think of all of it? Because I know I talked about it in the first impression, saying like it gave me very strong God of War vibes, because you do eventually unlock these 4 weapons that were given to you by the gods, and then those are what you use as your main tools to attack the demons and everything. And it was, this is a mild spoiler for the game, but we will say this, the 4 weapons are just the spear, the bow, a sword and shield, and then a chakram. So what did you think of like how they mix all the different weapons? And then the majority of this combat is, since it plays again how like the cinematics played into Golu being a puppeteer, Raji as a circus performer acrobat, like it is all about movement. It is all about moving, using her dodge, timing your attacks to a certain tempo to be able to get either unleash combos, special attacks, heavy attacks, things like that. So how did you feel about how all this flowed in the context of the game?
I think I needed to spend more time practicing.
Mm,
I will definitely say that I struggled with the combat quite a bit, actually.
okay.
The platforming I really enjoyed. I liked Raji's ability to climb up walls. I loved the wall running
Wall
and the
running is
wall
great.
jumping. I loved being able to like jump down tapestries and
Mhm.
kind of like ride along them as you go down a floor that you otherwise wouldn't be able to survive the fall. So the platforming aspects I really enjoyed. However, I think that I just wasn't getting it. I feel like the combat never really clicked for me, and it did honestly color my view of the game. Going away from Raji, I personally wouldn't say that it's high on my list of recommendations. I think that it definitely has its perks. I think it's a well done, beautiful indie game, but just because of the combat, I kind of went away thinking, ugh, that was really frustrating. I didn't necessarily love that. So I
Mhm.
loved the concept, but just these hands, they couldn't make it happen. So, it is a very acrobatic game, and the combat is meant to kind of flow in that same style. So you talked a lot about this in your first impressions, but the environment is very important to combat in
Mhm.
Raji. So you've got your spear, your trishul, and you've got your bow, and most of your weapons have a capacity to interact with the environment at large. So just like you said in your review, if you run up to a wall and like do a jump and try to like run up the wall, you can do like a sweet backflip and
Oh
like
yeah.
shoot arrows down from the sky as you're going over, or do a slam down with your spear. And those are meant to be very good attacks, both in terms of they give you a little bit of room, they give you some space to dodge, and they also do damage and just allow you to keep on your feet. That being said, maybe this was just me. Maybe I just wasn't doing it right. I felt so slow. I felt so slow in comparison to the enemies around me. Uh, Especially, what did you think about those gosh dang like monkey demons? Like the
Yes.
small ones. Oh my
Those
god.
those could swarm you pretty easily.
Those things sucked, and they were so fast. There were usually a lot of them because they didn't have a ton of health, but
Mhm.
they were incredibly quick, and they could just gang up on you like nobody's business. So even if you, or at least in my case, even if I did a wall jump and did some sweet backflips and did a slam down attack, if that missed any of them because they were kind of spread out, then other ones would rapidly close that distance between being just out of my range, and they would just come in for free hits basically, and I just didn't really know how to dodge, how to
Well, because yeah,
defend that.
there's not a dodge until again.
Yeah,
Here's a little slightly spoiler thing, but you don't really get a defense until you get the
yeah,
sword and shield, when you can use the second
exactly.
ability of the sword and shield, which is a full body shield that blocks you for a couple of attacks.
Yeah. So that's something that, before you get that, you just have the bow and the trishul, and I struggled a lot. I actually died quite a bit. Pretty much almost every fight, I would die at least once,
Mhm.
and I just found it really frustrating. I didn't necessarily love the combat. I'll just, I'll just put it that way.
No,
It
because
wasn't my favorite.
I mean, and that's fair, because I mean, I will say a lot of it, with it being, it does come down to the timing, the dodges with the attacks, and like being able to chain multiple attacks. And I did run into that a couple times too, where I did just get swarmed. I'm like, I can't do anything. But I will say though, when I was able to get that flow, and it did kind of click for me, and the combat was able to be more of a spontaneous thing, where I was like, okay, I understand what I'm going to get from doing this type of attack versus this type of attack. Here's how I can kind of match up my different weapons to get the best result. Because like they didn't necessarily tell you, but they did. But I did find out through trial and error that like using the second ability of the bow, where you would fire it straight up in the air and like you could choose where its bolts would land, that was really
Yeah.
good against the demons that like threw the poison balls at you, like the ones who would like lean back on, do like kind of lean
Yeah,
back
yeah,
and expose
yeah.
their stomach. That was like the kind of attack that was good against those. So I
Huh.
kind of like, I learned those things. Again, it wasn't very clear in the context of the tutorials that you would go through, but I did finally, once I figured out those little keys and those little tricks, I was able to get a little bit more of a handle on it. But there were a couple times, like during, like when you would do the tutorial for the bow, especially, I remember, and tried to do like the multi attack off of a leap. That took me a long time to get through, because
Me
I couldn't
too.
quite figure out what they were wanting me to do.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. I found that particular part that was kind of like a tutorial, because it's
Mhm.
like you had just gotten the bow, you were supposed to still be learning how to use it. I legitimately sat there and I was like, am I going to have to Google this? I cannot figure out what they're asking me to do here.
Mhm.
And it kind of just happened by accident that I did what it wanted. And then I was like, sure, okay.
Yeah.
But this is actually kind of funny. It was pretty shortly after that section I was dying a lot. So this is part of like the bow tutorial, kind of, where it's teaching you how to use it, and then you get into another area and it closes off, and you're surrounded by enemies, and you have to fight your way through them.
Mhm.
Typical hordes and waves of demons kind of
Right.
thing. So I was sitting there thinking, I've died about 3 times already. What if I try to go around them? Which you're technically not supposed to be able to do. So, what happens is, you're walking into this wide open area, and it's
Mhm.
kind of like a corridor, and then it sort of opens up into a circle or a square. And the circle is the area that's going to close off as soon as you get within range, because you're trapped in there with those demons until you defeat them.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I kind of know where the circle's going to start. So, kind of going out of the corridor, I tried my very best to just sneak past where the stalls were, where like some of the market stalls were. It technically worked,
Oh.
because what happened is I triggered the circle, but I wound up trapped between the stalls and where the circle was, like on level geometry. I was totally stuck.
Mhm.
But then I did the jumping attack, where I like ran up the side of one of the stalls to do a flip, but it didn't let me into the circle, so it glitched me back out to the side. So I had this hilarious thing where I was outside of the circle and the enemies were trapped in the circle, and I was like, I
Oh,
can
that's
just pick them off.
hilarious.
I can just pick them off from here with the bow. So it
Ah.
was a very stupid cheating solution and technically a glitch, but I was like, you know what? I'll take it.
Just take it. Take the wins where
So
you get them.
yeah, I'll take the win where I can get it. So I did exactly the shoot up attack, like where you just shoot an arrow straight up and then it lands on a bunch of enemies. And I was like, man, kind of wish I could do this for the whole game. So that actually is something that this is very specific to the bow. You know that I'm a big fan of action stealth games. I
Right.
love stealth aspects. I love being able to be very stealthy and very quick and quiet and, just an assassin. Raji's not really an assassin in personality, so I understand that that's not really her jam. But with the bow specifically, I found myself kind of wishing that there had been moments where it was a little bit more organic, that you could come upon enemies that weren't aware of you yet,
Mm.
and you could kind of snipe them off with the bow. I just wish that that had been, a potential mechanic to use, because I just like that. I
Yeah.
just get a lot of enjoyment out of sniping off a couple of, guards at the beginning and then going in for, the big horde battle.
hmm Yeah, no, I get that because level the playing field a little bit, especially weaken the enemies with the bow, go in with the spear or the sword and shield. I will say that once you got the sword and shield, that pretty much became my dominant weapon. Though, like I
Yeah.
didn't really feel a need to go back to the other ones because it provides you the protection with the shield for those couple hits, which is good when you're especially fighting like those monkey demons. Its ultimate attacks were pretty good, especially using the like ultimate ability that you would charge up at shrines. Like that one was
Yeah.
pretty solid for that weapon. So I didn't really see a need much to switch around to it. So then that though brings me to the orbs, the favor orbs that you can use to upgrade your abilities that are granted to you by the gods as well. You find those throughout exploration of the map and things like that. And it pulls up a secondary screen, and you can choose to allot the orbs to different abilities. Like there's electricity, ice, and fire, I believe, are the three that you could choose to go to. What did you think of that system? I liked it because you could like take the orbs and you could throw them all into electricity. You could throw them all into to ice, or you could throw them all into fire, or you could interchange them and spread them throughout, and you can change them at any time. I liked that a lot.
So I loved that. That was
Okay.
something that I thought was such a good idea. So the initial screen, that when it like first brings it up and it's like, hey, here's where you allot all of your ability orbs. I
Mhm.
was like, this is straight out of Ori and the Blind Forest, because it had like a triad kind of look to it. It was like,
Mhm.
well, here are your three options, and Ori has three different branching trees. But that's not how it was, and I was very pleased about that, because Ori's system is fine, but it's not amazing.
Yeah.
It's not anything to write home about. It's just an ability tree. I loved that Raji gave you the ability to switch at will. I
Mhm.
just thought, like, man, what a great quality of life thing that all other games should be doing. Just let me pick. They're my abilities. So
Yeah,
I
because,
love
like,
that
it-
you
like,
could
oh, this fits better for
reassign them
this
at any
sign.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, like so I actually didn't immediately catch on when I was first doing it that if I assigned something, I could undo it. So I clicked on an ability by accident, and then I was like, no, I didn't actually want that ability. And then I realized that, oh, I can undo it at any time?
Mhm.
That can't be right. And then I kept like trying it, and I was like, wow, they're really just gonna let me undo abilities and redo them at will. It's just, I can't really think of any other game that lets you so freely reassign your skills and abilities.
Without
And I just,
charging you for something else. Like
without charging you
sometimes,
for something
like
else.
Dragon Age, I know for example, because I've been playing through that again lately, is you can buy these certain books which will allow you to reset your skills and you can reassign your skill points. But like, yeah, this one you don't have to. You literally just go to the menu and just reassign the orbs wherever you want them in the tree. Super simple and super fun, super
I
effective.
love that there wasn't even a location. Like, you didn't
Mhm.
have to go to a specific shrine or something to do this. It's just like Jarrett said, you just pull up the menu and
Yeah.
you do it anytime you want. So as far as the game giving you these different weapons and these different elemental abilities, I thought that the ability to then let you just pick and choose whenever you wanted to of how you were going to use them and when. And if you never wanted to use fire, sure, don't. Use only electricity and ice.
Mhm.
Just want to use electricity? Sure, throw it all in there. I thought that was a really nice design choice, and I wish more games would do it that way. I thought that was a great idea.
Yeah. The only thing about it that I wasn't my biggest fan of that system is that the controls for choosing the slots and navigating between which god abilities you were going to use and stuff like that was a little
It was a little
counterintuitive, little clunky.
Yeah.
But once I got the feel of it, I was like, okay, I get it. Move on.
Now
But
I
like
get
the
it.
first couple times, it took me a bit to realize that how to change and like be able to even unassign the orbs and all that stuff. I was just like, wait, am I using my directional keys? Am I using my tabs? Like, what's going on here? That was a little clunky. But once I got it, it was fine.
I had a similar bit of that same kind of initial clunkiness with the controls of some of the game's environmental puzzles,
Mhm.
just because, for example, you'd come across like one of the initial puzzles is putting back together like a holy tree that
Mhm.
has been defaced or deformed by the demons that you have to make right.
Mhm.
And you get to this puzzle and it like wants you to interact with it, and I'm like, but how?
Yeah.
What? And it does tell you, like it gives you the ability to pull up the HUD, and then you can be like, oh, okay, the shoulder buttons are what rotates this thing. I select between the different levels with the D-pad.
Mhm.
It just wasn't super intuitive, and I think it could have been with just a few tweaks a little bit easier to immediately understand without necessarily needing the HUD.
It kind of seemed like those areas and those controls, because I even came across this too in the mandala puzzles that you'd have to solve, the like where it would basically just be these rotating pieces and you try to complete the picture in the circle by rotating these various rings of the circle. Those seem backwards to how, like, when I would tab
Yeah.
to the next circle, it would go the opposite direction of what in my head I thought it should go.
Yeah.
And so just a couple random things with that, but once you got the feel of them, they were easy enough to be able to figure out. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, speaking of which, though, the parts of the game, because the combat wasn't that stellar for me, but the parts of the game that I did really enjoy were obviously the puzzles.
Mhm.
I thought I'm a big fan of puzzles. You know this. My stance is more puzzles all the time. Throw them in there, get them all in there. So I really liked the puzzles, even though there weren't that many of them. I thought
Mhm.
that they were still a really fun part of the game. I also really liked the exploration factor. And really, my main two complaints about the game would be, well, three complaints we'll say would be not long enough. But it needs
It
to be
was
a
a fairly
longer
short
game.
game.
It's a fairly short game. I would have loved if it had been just a little bit longer. The combat wasn't that stellar for me personally. Obviously, I may have just sucked at it. That could just be me. But also that the exploration had been dialed up a little bit.
Mm.
I would have really liked if you had had a little bit more environmental freedom with what you could explore. For example, there's all kinds of stuff that you could, in theory, jump on. Like there's just tables kind of out and about in marketplace areas, for example, and part of me is like, let me jump upon them. I wish to jump on them and then to jump to the other side.
Yeah.
And the game's like, no, you will jump at the designated areas. And that kind of annoyed me because it's that Breath of the Wild effect. You're like, no, I should be able to jump at any time and climb anything as long as I have the mana to do it.
Yep.
So part of me just wanted more freedom with the exploration and just more of the exploration. If they had just made all of the environments a little bit bigger, made a bunch of random shoot off areas where they could pack in more like dumb collectibles that you can just go seek and find. That's the kind of stuff that I personally get a lot of enjoyment out of. So I would have liked to have seen that. But, it's an indie studio, really small. You work with what you've got. So who can really complain?
Yeah, and maybe, because I definitely feel like for what the game offered and for what it was trying to do, I thought it did very well.
Yes.
I agree. Yeah, some small tweaks could have made it a little bit. But again, I think that was more due to like the size of the studio and development time and what they were looking to do for this being their game and everything. So I will go ahead real quick before I get to any of the story stuff that we want to talk about. It's very interesting though that you say the combat was not your favorite, but you did love the platforming. The platforming drove me nuts.
Really?
Yes. And that was really one of my biggest cons of the game is I thought this game is built around the fluidity of your movement and the building up that momentum as well to be able to unleash more devastating things. The platforming is kind of pulled the game to a halt for me at times, where especially in areas in the later levels where you're traversing across vines and like sliding down vines, going from each of the other. And there was one segment near the end, especially where it was just jumping across platforms, but they had the camera at a odd angle that made that more difficult. Not necessarily, and so it was like that's what made it difficult, not necessarily that the game was difficult. And so because like to jump from the vine to vine, you had to do that thing where you get to the correct angle. Raji sticks out her arm, showing that I can jump to this vine now. But that area where she would do that seemed so precise that at first I would just be jumping off these vines all willy nilly because it wasn't locked to it. You could be behind the vine and you jump behind it. It was those parts just kind of drug it down a little bit and because I'm like, this is all supposed to be about me fluidly moving from one place to the other. How come now I'm being so slowed down by having to inch Raji along, notch at a time on the thumbstick to get her to the correct angle where then she sticks out her arm? Like, I felt like there could have been a little bit more wiggle room there to allow for that stuff. And then too, that platforming stuff. I'm like, again, I'm not here to necessarily, I know it's a platforming game, so that's to be expected, jumping to different levels and different platforms. But I'm also like, again, you made this difficult by having this camera at an odd angle where now I'm dying several times because it's not clear what angle I should be jumping at. Not that it's like I'm missing some technique or some skill of the game itself. And so that was a little frustrating to me.
I definitely agree with what you've said. And I feel like part of that does have to do with the fixed camera, because this being an isometric top-down game, you really have no control over the camera at all, which in the cases of platforming, it would have been nice to been able to have just shifted the camera a little. Not a full 360 view. I didn't need that, but there were definitely a few times where it was just kind of hard to gauge the depth of like where you were trying to go and what angle did you actually need to be. And I missed a few jumps and just like straight died because I was like, whoops, I did not jump at the correct time. So I definitely agree. Sometimes the fixed camera did not help at all. And other times it was actively a hindrance in a couple of cases, but not often. Most of the time I didn't struggle with the camera.
I didn't either. I'm not saying it was every time there was a platforming thing I had an issue with this. It was
just a few times.
And that it kind of was an issue, which is then funny because in my first impressions, I was like, the camera's great and it never hinders me. But I just hadn't gotten
first impressions.
Yep. I just hadn't quite gotten far enough to uncover this aspect.
Right.
But unless you had any other parts of the overall design or mechanics of the game to go over, I think I do want to jump into a little bit of story stuff now.
Yeah, let's just talk about the story. I think that's really where the game shines.
And so for people listening, this is where story spoilers will begin. So if you don't want those, skip ahead. I have the chapters and everything where you can see where you can skip ahead safely and avoid spoilers. So go ahead and do that if you want to avoid them. But do you want to? My biggest thing really about the story, and like we've talked about the story about going through the different places, I didn't really have a whole lot of notes on the story overall. More the ending.
Well, so my opinion on this is it's your game because I picked Spiritfarer and you picked Raji, so I want to hear it from you. This is your time to shine.
So again, because the game is so short, it's like what would you say? I originally pitched it to you as maybe like 8 hours, but I think it might even be less than that, like 4 to 5.
So I really do think that it's more like 4 to 5. I looked up like what do other people think the game takes, and one of the breakdowns that I found said that if you were just doing the straight storyline, it would take you approximately 4.5 hours.
Yeah.
And if you were doing a completionist run, it would be about 5 to 6. I think that that's pretty accurate.
I agree.
Raji is a very short game, and aside from the cultural and historical aspects of it, I frankly did not give a single darn about saving my stupid little brother. I'll just be frank.
I mean, that's what I think too. Like the game shines, and I agree with that. The game shines because of its mechanics, the combat, and the platforming. That's where and I think it's in its educational aspects as well, and its cultural significance is what it portrays of India. I think that's where the game shines. The story is one that was just there. Like I appreciated that it was the avenue for me to get to learn so much about the Hindu gods and deities and all this backstory that I did not know much about. But the story overall is a very cut and dry thing of your village was attacked by Mahabalasura and his demonic forces. Golu was taken. You have to go save them. You encounter a few boss fights along the way that once you clear like each area. And then that eventually comes down to when, yes, you do wind up eventually rescuing Golu from Mahabalasura. So I agree with what you're saying too. The story outside of that point, there's not a whole lot to hit on. But what I did want to hit on in the last little bit that I wanted to talk about was the finale of the game and its ending. It left me confused and not honestly sure what I just did. Because it pretty much ends with, and this big spoiler, so last final warning here. It really ends. You fight Mahabalasura, which I thought was a very good fight. I thought that boss fight was fun because especially like he mirrors himself and does all this other things to make the fight kind of engaging. But
I don't think we've ever mentioned it, but he's an ox demon. He's like a bull or an ox. So
Yes.
I just think that that's fun. You don't get to fight many ox demons.
No.
That's kind of neat.
And so you go through his fight and then you beat him and you're like, hell yeah, I got it. I got him down.
Did it.
Won
the game.
Saved my brother and saved my people. But then it's like, it basically says he's an illusionist. He's like a master of illusion and everything. And so it's basically like this whole time you've been fighting him, you weren't fighting him. And he was still able to sneak off and like recite this mantra to open up this gate that allows into the Devas, like you were talking about, and basically succeeds in his plan. And then it says while he's reciting his mantra, another voice joins, which was Golu. And then so it's like he opens the gate, and it basically says like, who knows what horrors will be unleashed. And then it just shows a cutscene of Golu and Raji finding themselves in a sandstorm. And I'm just like, wait, so did he win? And then it even says like, and Golu was the key. So it's like, so he won.
Yeah, I didn't really get it either.
And I just didn't. I honestly, like, for all the good things that we've talked about with this game, like that, I was just like, what? It's over, and he won, and that's just it.
I mean,
and like Vishnu and Durga didn't even give a narration to like sum it up either.
That's something that I thought was really weird because I noticed that absence too, and I was just like, they've been here the whole time.
Yeah.
Where are they now? To like give a little recap. I do feel like
they're the ones who say that like it's that he succeeded, like he opened the gate. Who knows what's going to happen? And Golu was the key. But like outside of that, like there's no other explanation.
It felt abrupt.
Yes.
It just felt super abrupt, and it's like, part of me felt like, did I somehow get the bad ending?
Yeah. But like there was no sign that there there was no sign that there was a different path because I did everything right up until that point. You know what I mean? So I was and then just the credits roll and it's Raji and Golu on a camel in the desert and they look happy. I'm like, so
they look fine.
so I was just very confused by the ending. I was just like, what?
Yeah.
Am I supposed to be happy? Am I supposed to be disappointed?
I don't know. I honestly didn't really get it either. I kind of had the same kind of whiplash reaction of like, what just happened here? I'm a little slightly confused.
And I even did I was Google searching to see if like I just missed an important key that I missed somewhere. And no, all the other articles or any resources that I could find out were basically saying the same thing. Yeah, it just ends. And I was just like, okay. So while I got a lot out of the combat and I got a lot out of, how fun that was, unleashing these devastating combos and attacks onto the demons and everything, just again, and even though I said like the story isn't that big, like in the grand scheme of things where I think the game shines, still getting to the end and not having a rewarding payoff kind of fell flat to me.
Yeah, it was just a little... I really don't have a better word for it than abrupt.
Yeah.
It just felt really sudden, and that really just ties back to my whole thing of I kind of felt like the game should have been a little longer. It just kind of felt like there was supposed to be more.
I feel like a cutscene more would have been not even a level, just a cutscene more with a little bit more narration from Durga and Vishnu telling us what's going on. I feel like that would have done leaps and bounds, but instead it just I was just kind of like, okay. So that was a game I played.
So that was a game I played. So there definitely were detractors about it. We don't want to sugarcoat it and say that it was the best indie game ever because, it
has its problems. It has its problems.
Yeah. But so do most games. Like most games, they can't all be Hollow Knights.
No.
They can't all be perfection, gems, diamonds in the rough. So I do feel like this game could have used a couple of tweaks, a little bit of changing, but really the main highlights for me were the beautiful environments. I just think it's a gorgeous game. The soundtrack is really good, really helps set the scene. And honestly, I was trying to look them up and see if I could actually find them, but unfortunately I wasn't really able to. The voice actors, especially for Durga and Vishnu, his voice is so fun.
It is good.
He's my favorite god now because I'm like, he's such a great voice and I think it's really fun and silly.
Keep telling me your stories, Vishnu.
Right.
Please.
Tell me more about your stories because the what's it called? The dynamic. I was going to say dichotomy, but I knew that wasn't right. The dynamic between Durga and Vishnu is that Durga is very like pro Raji. She's the one that's like, I picked her. She's gonna do great. You're just gonna have to trust me, there, buddy boy. And
Yep.
Vishnu's like, this is a random circus girl you found out in the middle of nowhere, and you think she's gonna save us from the demons. So he kind of plays that. He's not a negative Ned at all, but he does play that opposing voice of being like, you kind of need more than just slick acrobatics to take down gods. And I just thought that their entire dynamic was really engaging. I got a lot of joy just out of. I could have played a whole. I could have had this as a movie. Is really what it boils down to. Is I loved the cutscene designs. I loved the murals. They could have taken all of that and just kind of smashed it into a weird movie, and I would have been like 10 out of 10, perfect movie. It boils down to just I didn't really need to play it. I just wanted to experience it. Is kind of my feel on it.
I got you. And I agree with you on the same things. Like I think the things where it really shined were everything that you just said. Again, I got a little bit more out of the combat than you, but it was still, and I think that made it a whole lot of fun to play. But again, there's not really anything now for me to go back to re-experience. I could go back and see if I could find more orbs, because I'm sure I missed a few things, a few of the orbs and things like that. But again, with the ending of it just kind of being so abrupt, I'm just kind of like, oh, okay, that was a fun experience for me to play this one time, and stuff like that. But do I regret playing it? No, because I do think that for the educational, the culture, the lore, and everything that I got out of it was a big plus of this game. And plus, the combat was a lot of fun once I did really get into the groove of it all, and I really had a good time with that. I just don't necessarily see it as one that I'll come back to.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you're right. There's just not that much to come back to.
I mean, maybe they're setting it up for a sequel. Like, hey, here's a taste. Here's a taste of what, with this first game. Here's what we can do. If this attracts you more, sure. Expect our second game, Raji 2. I'll be interested when that comes around. But at the same time, too, I was just like, but then also, I don't know if I want to, sign on for another thing just to have an abrupt, confusing end.
Yeah, but also it's not a full price game by any means.
No,
it's an affordable game. It's a shorter experience, so I feel like for what you're getting, yeah, it's probably worth it. I mean, if you're really interested in that setting and you really kind of want to learn more about something that you're not super familiar with, at least in our case, go for it. Wait for it to go on sale, maybe on Steam, and then snatch it up. Why not?
Yep.
I've played much worse games,
and for a lot more money.
For a lot more money and for a lot more time.
Yeah.
Think about how much time we had to pump into Life is Strange 2, a game I arguably liked less. More time, more money, not that much more out of it. So, it is what it is, and I feel like you can get as much as you want to put into it out of it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely so. Well, I mean, that pretty much wraps up our review of Raji, an Ancient Epic. Have you played the game on Switch? Are you looking forward to playing it on either the PS4, Xbox One, or PC? Let us know, and let us know what your thoughts of the game were as well. What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? We'd love to hear from you. Send us an email at teamchatpodcast@gmail.com. Comment below on any of the places that you're listening and or watching. But until next time, everybody, I'm one of your hosts, Jarrett Wilson, joined across the power of the internet by my co-host, Rachel Mogan.
Peace out.
We'll see you all next week for another great, exciting gaming topic. We'll see you then.